So, here's a depressing statistic I saw online the other day. Apparently, if you're in your early to mid 40s, you've already lived around 52% of your life. I wish I could say I just shrugged at that, but to be honest, I didn't. In fact, the more I thought about it, it just kinda sucked. Like, really sucked. I guess because I don't normally think about my life as a percentage. Who does? Most days it just feels like, well, life. Work, family, plans, deadlines, and whatever's next. But the second you turn it into a number, something shifts. You start measuring. You, and by you I really mean I, start doing mental math I didn't plan on doing. And that's when it gets uncomfortable. It wasn't panic. It wasn't even fear exactly. More like a slow heaviness. A quiet, oh. Because when you're younger, you don't think in halves. Life kind of feels open-ended. You assume there's time, because there's always time. Later, I'll sort my health out. Later, I'll take that risk. Later, I'll finally start the thing I've been talking about for years. You live in later. And later feels harmless. It costs nothing today. It protects the version of you that hasn't been really tested yet. Because as long as something is postponed, it stays perfect in theory. The second you try it, it becomes real. And real things can fail. So later quietly stretches, not because you're lazy, because it feels safe. But when time becomes quantifiable, later starts to feel expensive. Then you see 52%, and suddenly later has edges. And that's where my mind went. Not to death, but to drift. Like, have I been intentional or just busy? Have I been choosing or mostly reacting to whatever was in front of me? Because drift doesn't look dramatic. It looks, well, kind of responsible. It looks like handling what's urgent, paying what's due, keeping things stable. And stability can disguise inertia. If nothing is breaking, you don't feel pressure to build. But halfway forces a different question. Not, is everything fine? But, is everything intentional? When that number hit me, I had to ask myself something uncomfortable. Am I actually afraid of dying? Or am I afraid of reaching the end and realizing I lived most of it on autopilot? Because autopilot doesn't feel reckless. It feels normal. Which is why it can run for years without being challenged. It's strange how a simple number can trigger that kind of internal audit. The number itself isn't the problem. It's what it reveals. If it makes you uneasy, and when I think about it, it probably means there's something you still care about. Something unfinished. Something postponed. Something you assumed you'd have time to circle back to. That slow heaviness, it isn't just fear, it's awareness. And awareness can either freeze you or focus you. At some point, life stops feeling infinite and starts feeling finite. Not scarce, just quantifiable. And that changes how you see things. A year doesn't feel disposable anymore. It feels noticeable. You start paying attention to how you spend your evenings, who you give your energy to, what you tolerate, and who you tolerate, what you keep putting off. And when time feels measurable, pace suddenly matters. Not in a frantic way, but like in a directional way, I suppose. The first half of life often feels like expansion, trying things, becoming things, accumulating experience, saying yes just to see what happens. But maybe the second half isn't about expansion. Maybe it's about intention. Not what else can I add, but what actually matters enough to keep. That's not crisis. That's refinement. That's, well, compression of noise into clarity. Cutting what doesn't fit anymore. Protecting what actually matters. Choosing on purpose instead of by default. Maybe figuring all of that out is what we label as a midlife crisis. But to me, it feels more like calibration. A midlife calibration. Not burning your life down, not scrambling to achieve more, just tightening the focus, getting honest about where you've been passive, and deciding where you don't want to be anymore. Getting honest about what deserves your time now. See, because if you've lived 52% already, you've also learned a lot. You've built things, lost things, changed more than you probably realize. There's depth there that didn't exist in your 20s. In your 20s, you have energy. Later, you gain discernment. And discernment changes how you move. The meme made it sound like a countdown. And maybe, technically, it is. But that slow heaviness I felt when I read it, it wasn't telling me I'm running out. Well, maybe it was trying to. But that's not the way I took it. I didn't hear panic. I heard, pay attention. And perspective doesn't demand panic. It demands participation. Time isn't endless. And that doesn't have to be depressing. It can just mean this part matters more than you used to think. So maybe the number isn't there to scare you. Maybe it's there to interrupt drift. To quietly ask, are you living the way you'd want to? Honestly?